You've been looking at this whole game development stuff for a while now, and you're not really certain, ooh, should I get into it? Because there's mass layoffs in the industry and it's getting harder than ever to stand out and all of these things, like I'll probably never make money with it. Should I really do it, or should I just go outside and touch grass and continue my life? And this video is kind of a bit of a hope core video of, hey, look, I try to usually give a very realistic view and sometimes kind of depressing on this channel, but I think at the end of the day, I don't want to title the video like this, but there has never been a better time for game development is not fully true, but it is a good time to get started with game development if you're looking at this from the perspective, hey, I want to get started. I want to do this maybe first as a hobby, maybe transition into it years down the line. It's a bad time right now to be a professional game developer. I'll tell you that much, but actually going it from more of a hobby perspective, hey, I have been someone who has been playing video games since I was born, whilst I was still in the womb or whatever. Now is the time. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. I want to go over it. Why should you get started with game development? Because I think it is pretty cool. And the first reason is that, yeah, it has never been easier. And then I don't exactly mean like selling your game, but it has never been easier making a game. Key distinction, but making a game is probably one of the easiest points it's been ever. Back in the old days, you had to learn programming from scratch. You often had to make your own engines. There were not really many real engines that other people could use. And then, yeah, of course, you had Unity picking up in like early 2010s, but it still wasn't always the easiest. It was very much like finding information wasn't always there. You needed to have a good understanding of programming. But at this point, with how YouTube has evolved, with how engines have evolved, basically every single engine is free, which is honestly kind of nuts if you think about it. And if you do have to pay, it's only after your game is out already and you've made like a pretty substantial amount of money, like over $1 million in case of Unreal, over 200,000 in case of Unity, and even engines that used to be premium, like Game Maker Studio, which is one of the more easy approaches in the game dev, have gone free now. Things like Godot are completely open source, 100% free for everything. So with that, combined with the fact that there are so many resources on the internet, on YouTube, tutorials and all of that from really good educators, you can get started with making your own games and making those little prototypes on your own pretty easily. Are you going to be making masterpieces in the beginning? No, not at all. I think this is maybe a bit like, let's pull you back down. Something I've noticed a lot with people getting into game development is, and this is something that we have as humans in general, is we overestimate how much we can do in a short period, but we underestimate how much we can do in a longer period. That's also why I say like, hey, now is a good time to get started so that in a few years down the line, you have a good idea of what's going on and the industry will most likely be recovered by then. You're not going to be making a Breath of the Wild clone or the next Elder Scrolls in like 3 months. That is not going to happen. But I think if you get at it and you just focus on, hey, doing a little bit of like starting with smaller projects and, you know, joining a game jam, this is stuff that we've talked about before, you can get very far already in like 1 year or 2 years if you keep going at it. We came in this from no fucking clue what we were doing at all to, okay, releasing our first game, kind of shit, canceling our second game, still kind of shit, but now 2 years later, hey, we are getting there and we are getting better and better and it only keeps going up from here. So do know that, hey, it's not going to be easy money or you're immediately going to be making the next Hollow Knight, because that's what a lot of game devs think. But if you do go in it with, hey, I want to learn this new hobby and I want to get started with making games, then right now is a great approach. And it's not even the engines that have gotten free, but even distributing your games where back in the old days, you had to actually burn it on CDs and bring it to a physical brick and mortar store has gotten a lot more easy. Of course, you do have the problem that like 50 games every day are released on Steam now, which is kind of an issue, but releasing a game on Steam, it's just pay $100 and you can do it. And maybe this will change one day, but right now, this is really awesome. You have other platforms, of course, like Epic Game Store. Nobody really cares about that, but Steam used to be a lot harder, a lot more restrictive for indie games. And now, once again, you can just make the game you want and put it on there. Now, of course, this is just something that I want to say to you. If you are like, oh, let's buy the $100 Steam credit, try to make some good quality content on there. So there's already enough slop on Steam. I made a video about that before. So yeah, I think at least the cost of making games shouldn't hold you back to get started. Another good thing about why it's so awesome to learn game development is the fact that you're kind of doing a 3-in-1 deal or however many in one combo deal for learning new skills and all of that. Because one of the things that beginning game developers often think, and you may be thinking now as well, is okay, the name is game developer, which means like developer. That means I'm just writing code all day, right? And the good news, and also kind of bad news, is that no, game development, like writing the actual code, is often just a small part, like 30% or something, of the bigger picture of making a game. There's so many other things, like for example, learning how to work with 2D or 3D art, how to do UI work, how to get music and sound design, how to get game design. If you want to do, you can try out like doing some marketing, making some devlogs, making some TikToks, making whatever content. There are so many different disciplines of game development, and if you're going into it with a hobbyist approach, it's honestly kind of good because you get to get that little taste of everything instead of just going and being like, okay, I'm going to learn programming as my hobby and I'm only going to be making SaaS applications. Yeah, probably that's not as fun as, hey, you get to play with music, you get to play with like making levels, putting down physical buildings in your engine and being like, okay, now we're getting a world that I am shaping myself. And I think a lot of these skills honestly transfer really well into main life. Like things like, for example, learning 2D art and things like that leads you to use photo manipulation tools. And that is probably one of my, I always say this, my favorite skill is just getting good at Photoshop, or if you want, Affinity Photo is another solution, but getting good at that, you need it for game development, but it allows you to, like, if you have family pictures or whatever, you can do cool stuff with that as well. You can make your own little logos or icons or whatever, and it just makes you more well-rounded, and at least that's something that I really value, being able to have like kind of a generalist mindset, and game development definitely is something where you need to be kind of a generalist to get something out there. Now, getting something out there, that brings me to my next one, because yeah, I say like, hey, join like your game jams and follow like Code Monkey's Kitchen Chaos series and whatever to learn it. But once you have a little bit of a grasp on, hey, how does game development work? Then you can start with the real reason probably why you want to do game development. Making the games that for some reason nobody else has been making, or not the ones that you want at least. This is probably one of the most common reasons that I hear as well of why do people want to get started with game development. Because they used to play this one specific game back when they were younger and they have really fond memories with all of that. But there's no new games coming out anymore that encapsulate that specific style of what I wanted. For me personally, for example, I would pay good money for a true good feeling like Call of Duty zombie style game, because honestly, after Black Ops 2, it kind of all went downhill, and of course some developers have tried making those standalone games like Killing Floor and whatever, but nothing ever tickled my fancy. So if I wanted to, I can be the person who says, fine, I'll do it myself, and get started working on that dream project of making the game that I wanted, that seemingly nobody else really understands. And I think that is just beautiful at the end of the day, that you can do that. It's kind of crazy how you can make those games. Sure, it may take some time and you may not be able to make everything yourself. You may need to use things like asset packs and whatever, but still you can make a lot already and you can make some good experiences. But once again, keep in mind, you overestimate what you'll be able to do in like 3 months. So I would not be able to make that game in 3 months, but I think you, on the other hand, underestimate what you can do if you keep going at it slowly. You don't need to crunch, you don't need to burn out on this shit, because speaking from experience, it's not fun to burn out on game dev. You can do something pretty nice in the long run and making that the dream game. And then finally, of course, I wanted to put this at the back, but it's something that a lot of game developers think about at the end of the day, and that is one of the reasons usually why they kind of get kicked over the edge is, okay, Stardew Valley, Eric Barone never has to work a day in his life again, or Lethal Company was made by, I think, a 17-year-old developer, and he pretty much is also set for life now, just by making a fun game. And it's like, hey, if you look at that, it's like, oh my god, I make my Call of Duty Zombies like alternative, like modern day alternative, and it blows up and people love it. Hey, if I can make $10,000 or $100,000, or God forbid I make $10 million from it, is the chance extremely low? Yeah, of course, but it's still something that the potential could be there. It's once again not in 3 months, but it's something that can be really nice to work with as well. Now, once again, don't go in this expecting you'll get money, because you'll be sorely disappointed. Chances are that if you release on Steam, you'll make like a few $100 tops, but it's still, you know, there's that tingle in the back of your mind of like, what if this game blows up? What if I make something good? And what if I, like, hey, whether it is extra pocket money or whether it is like life-changing money, probably not gonna happen, but yeah, I think it's still very nice to have that thought about it and to just have a hobby that doesn't just cost you money, but that can still earn you some money down the line as well. So if you want to get started with game development, there's a great video I made earlier this year talking about everything, basically the entire process of how do you get started with the original game idea up to, okay, making the demos, releasing the game on Steam. I'll link that up there if you're interested in that. I think it's a very good video to give you more of an idea. Apart from that, we make 2 videos every week on this YouTube channel talking about the things that we've learned along the way, how we've been approaching our game development journey and all of that. I think there's some really interesting stuff in there as well. So if you're interested in that, then be sure to head down below and subscribe as well. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! Oh, you stayed all the way till the end? Well, now you can see my beautiful cat. Look at this pussy. Bye bye.